We have another gallery here at the museum, and it has exhibits that come and go. Now, this exhibit has been up for about 2 years, but it is an exhibit that is about the Kituwa language. Most people call it the Cherokee language, but we call it the Kituwa language. It is in written form, and many of our people learned how to write in the syllabary that Sequoyah created. Sequoyah created this syllabary over several years' time, starting in 1809. Achieving it in 1821, he felt like he had completed the syllabary at that time, 1821. And so this year, 2021, marks the 200th anniversary of literacy among our people. Sequoyah was a Kituwa, or he was a Western Cherokee. He came into the Arkansas Territory in 1818 and lived there among the Arkansas people. And then when they were forced on over into Indian Territory, he moved from Arkansas into Indian Territory. While he was in Arkansas, he had a salt spring where he processed salt from that spring. And then when he moved on over into Indian Territory, he also had a salt spring here, and that's down by Aiken, close to Vian, Sallisaw area. And he was there until he decided to go into Mexico to find the people who were there, the Cherokees or Kituwas, who went into Old Mexico trying to find a land, a home of their own, land that they could call their own. And he went down there looking for them so that he could teach them how to read and write in their own language. And there are many people there in that area who claim that they are descended from the Cherokees, because there was quite a number of them that were there. They were in Texas first, and then when they had the war with Texas, they were always having skirmishes with the Texans, and then finally they lost the battle in Texas. Some of them came back up into Indian Territory. That was in 1936, I believe, and some of them went on down into Old Mexico. But this year marks the 200th anniversary, and we have our exhibit here of syllabary documents that have been translated for the first time into English. And there's a lot of history here that we didn't know about until we translated these documents into English. And so there are stories about Kituwas. And these stories were stories that were passed on orally for generation to generation to generation. And then when the syllabary came about, people began to write these stories down. And now we have these stories preserved for our children, grandchildren, and the people following behind us, so that if they don't read the syllabary, they can still know what these documents say. We do have a language program going now. We have some first language speakers that are working in that program and creating the curriculum, a way to teach the language, and hopefully we'll be able to bring back some of that language to our people. A lot of our people do not speak the language anymore. A lot of them do not, and even more of them do not read and write in the language. But it would be really great if we could find a way to bring the language back, both in spoken and written form, to our people. Because the language, and I've heard it said several times, that the language is your heritage. It is who you are. It is the main thing in your culture that defines your culture. It defines who you are. And so it's very important part of us. And it's something that we really need to concentrate on to try to bring it back to our children and grandchildren, to see that they learn how to read and write and speak. So we're celebrating Sequoyah this year as a Western Cherokee, and we like to call him Ketua because he came through Arkansas and then on into Oklahoma with our people. And he was called a genius. He was given some money, a yearly allowance, because of his genius and because of his creating a method to communicate in the language. And he is recognized throughout the world as a genius. And there have been many things that were named after him. You see the name Sequoyah very frequently. And so people do recognize him and honor him as someone who is very special, very determined. I say the Ketuas are a very determined people, and that's a nice way, I guess, of saying stubborn. But Sequoyah was very determined, very stubborn, that he was going to create this writing system, and he achieved it. He stayed after it. He was consistent. He was just always working on this. And some people thought that he was mad, or that he had was doing some kind of voodoo or some sort of sorcery, and some of them burned his house, burned his papers, but that did not deter him. He kept going, and he was able to achieve this, and it's passed down for these 200 years. So come to the museum, see this exhibit also. And we have the stories that are written that you can read. There's some on the wall, and we have some in loose leaf binders that you can read. So come and join us here.